Hi guys, it's Veronica, and today it's time for my very first discussion slash topic-y video, and well, I'm very excited. Please be kind to me because I have no clue what I'm doing. No. This topic will all be more about sharing my opinions, my views on the topic of fanfiction versus the books, as you can see down below there on the title. But first off, this is not going to be a video about comparing books to fanfiction, because for me that will be a very unfair comparison. Well, first I want to explain to you, for those who don't know what fanfiction is, what it entails. Fanfiction is, as the name implies, fiction written by fans, which means that with any fandom or any kind of book, TV series, movie, or anything other that you enjoy, there will be a whole lot of people who will think differently about stuff that happened in those, well, stories, and want to put their own spin on it. So some people decide to do that literally and start writing their own stories about the world and the characters and post them online on sites like fanfiction.net, dakuga.com, all those kind of sites. Though the main site will always be fanfiction.net, it is a very large website with well over a few million fanfictions. Not surprisingly, the most popular topic is Harry Potter, though Twilight is not far behind. I've been personally reading fanfiction for about 8 years now. I started with Harry Potter, then moved on to Twilight, other TV series I liked. I also read a lot of fanfiction about an anime called Inuyasha. I really enjoy it, mostly because they're mostly different opinions about certain characters, and they want to explain their views, and by doing that, they write a story about it so you can see their personal opinions and the way they feel like the story should have been or would have been funnier, or any way you like it. You can reach for the moon with this. Mostly you will find storylines change, personality traits change, because like with Bella, sometimes people feel she's a Mary Sue because she doesn't do very much, and people change her to be a bit more badass. So basically fanfiction is a new story based on already existing material. This topic is going to be specifically about 2 Twilight fanfictions that were turned into books. I've read both the books and the fanfictions, and I will try and compare them to the original material and how they stand with each other. One is the infamous 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James, and the other is Clip Wings and Inked Armor by Helena Hunting. Well, first off, I really want to make a point on the differences between books and fanfiction. Books usually start as a first draft by an author who then tries to get it published by going through multiple publishing houses mostly, and they will edit it from there. They will help them change the storyline to be more fluid, or some character changes. They notify them of plot holes that may or may not exist in the stories. Fanfiction, however, is mostly like a first draft. It is self-published on the internet, mostly only pre-read by a beta reader who will just normally focus on the grammar mistakes and fix those. Books are usually improved before they even hit the racks, and fanfiction just gets published mostly the way it is. Some fanfictions can be amazing from the get-go, but most of them aren't, if I have to be honest. But I love it, and I can see beyond that, but some people can't, and that's why it's something that you can choose to read or choose not to read. It's a free site after all. In this video, I will be comparing 50 Shades of Grey to the original fanfiction called Master of the Universe, which I have on a PDF file on my laptop, as well as Clip Wings and Inked Armor to the fanfiction of the same name. And finally, I will compare the 2 published works with each other. So here we go, fanfiction versus the books. Well, the first thing I did was compare the books to the original file for the first few chapters and notice what I could see when it amounts to differences from those, which means changing in the writing style, small plot changes, if there's any grammar corrected or anything like that. I did this first because I read both of the fanfictions and could remember most of the, you know, important plot twists and turns. So I didn't need to read both of them next to the real published deal to get a clear look on the main outline. The first book I compared to its fanfiction was 50 Shades of Grey through to 50 Shades Freed by E.L. James. As I mentioned before, the fanfiction it was originally based on was called Master of the Universe and has been pulled from the site quite a long time ago, but I still have it on a PDF file from the original one. I don't really know how to start this. Well, actually I do. I'm going to tell you a little story. A couple of years ago, I was in the bookshop browsing through some books because they only have one shelf of English books at my local bookstore. And I was browsing through them and I saw this box set of 3 books called 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Darker, and 50 Shades Freed. And I personally didn't know what they were about at that time. So I read the synopsis and it sounded interesting. I really didn't know what it was about because it doesn't clearly explain it. So I bought it. Back home, I unpackaged it and, well, started reading the first book. But after a few pages, I had the feeling of déjà vu. I knew this from somewhere. I read it somewhere before, or I just didn't know. I just couldn't shake that feeling. So a few days later, I had this sort of light bulb moment, and I remembered where I read it before, so I pulled up the PDF file after a long search on my laptop, and I started reading them side by side, and I noticed one thing. There was only one difference between the fanfiction and the book. The names. The names were changed of the characters, and then not even so much. They could still be sort of recognized by the names. I mean, Isabella Swan with Anastasia Steele. So, Anastasia, Anna, and Isabella Bella. It was still pretty compatible to me. And then later on I figured out that the only things the author had changed were names and the appearances, so they wouldn't match up to the original one too closely. Even though I found out I had already read the story, I still finished reading the books to see if there were any big differences about the plot line or whatever. And there were some things that did bother me about the story. Well, first off, of course, it was that only the names were changed and the appearances, so it wasn't like a new discovery for me. It was like rereading a fanfiction, as I often do. 2, it still feels like a fanfiction when you read it. It doesn't feel like anything has changed that much from the Twilight universe it was originally set in, even though it was classified as all human, which means that the universe has changed and there are no longer vampires. Especially Anna and Bella still shared some traits. They're both kind of clumsy, awkward, shy, both bite their lips a lot and seem to talk to themselves every 5 seconds. There were no changes to the storyline in my opinion, not even a slight one. Everything was exactly the same as I remembered it. There were no surprises anywhere. And lastly, for me it seemed like there was barely to no editing. I even found some of the same grammar mistakes, and it just seemed so similar. I feel like an editor should have picked up on a certain thing, like the repetition of the inner goddess that replays anything that Anna is thinking, feeling, not daring to say. It's so much repetition that for me personally it became annoying. Just like it did the first time around in the fanfiction. And especially one thing in the books personally bothered me, and that was the awkwardness of some situations, which I feel the movie did amazing by turning it into almost a comedy. It made me laugh, and the tension just flew off me because I have really displaced awkwardness. I get really ashamed for things that the character does easily. I get really red and annoyed and sweaty and just nah. So I feel like the movie did a great job on that. So for me personally, there's not really a distinction between the book and the fanfiction, so both in my opinion are tied in this case. Now on to Now on to Clipped Wings and Inked Armor by Helena Hunting, which was based on a fanfiction of the same name, only these have been split into 2 books. One is called Clipped Wings, the other is Inked Armor. Also a little story about how I found out about these. I loved the fanfiction back when I first read it. I reread it several times. That's also why I downloaded the PDF version, because I just wanted to keep a part of it near and dear to me. And well, I was on Instagram one day and I was just browsing through the pictures, and I found a picture of a book duology called Clipped Wings and the other one called Inked Armor, and I was just looking at it. I was like, oh, is that the story, the fanfiction? Because it had been pulled a while back. So I searched online and I found out it was based on the fanfiction, and I just got so excited because I love the original fiction. So the next time I was in the American Book Center with a friend of mine, you might know her, Maud from Reading Miss Froggy. I saw them on a discount for €10 a piece and I just had to have them. I immediately bought them. I went home and started reading them. I just couldn't wait to get started on it. Well, I'm not going to be telling you about the plot. It is a fairly unknown book, but I'm not going to go into the plot because I'm actually planning on doing Clipped Wings and Inked Armor as a review later on in the next month. So I wouldn't want to spoil too much for you. But I am going to give you a short synopsis so you could understand a little more what I'm talking about and give you more of a feel for the book. It's basically about a tattoo artist with a really bad past and a girl who lives across from the street who just recently went through a very tragic experience in her life. It isn't a happy-go-lucky book, I can tell you that. As with 50 Shades of Grey, there were a few things that bothered me, so let me just start by summing up those. First off, in the original fanfiction, they were flatmates. I wouldn't call them flatmates, but they lived one floor above or under it. But she lived one floor above him in the same apartment complex, and that's how they saw each other regularly. In this book, they live across from the street from another because he lives above the tattoo shop and she lives above the bookshop where she works. I also missed like a few of the small details that just really endeared the story to me, but it's just like really small details, so it was just me personally. I doubt anybody else is going to notice them, but still. And 4, I really missed the chapter names because they were all related to like weather and moods, and they really set the mood for they really set the atmosphere for the book, and I really loved those, but they were kept out because it apparently didn't fit with the story or anything like that. What I did love about the book is that the author kept the dual point of view. In the original story, it was a switch off between Bella and Edward, and in the books it's the same way with Tenley and Hayden. And it just really works out because you can see both sides of the story and they have a really separate voice, so it makes them easy to distinguish. And there were a lot of plot changes, like big ones. It was like reading an entirely new story with influences from another one. It was amazing. In the old one there was a lot, and I do mean a lot, of drama. A little bit too much at times, and from this one they cut out an entire storyline that just took it a little bit over the top and turned it down to an acceptable, more realistic level that I really, really enjoyed. I also really actually enjoyed some little hints to the previous fanfiction. It was like the cupcake tattoo was really cute, but he talked about a ladybug on her toe, and in the original one she got a ladybug tattoo instead of the cupcake, so it was like a joke between us, the author and me, because I understand where that came from, and it was so much fun to see those little hints of what it was. 4. The characters were not recognizable from the original Twilight characters that they were. The characters were completely changed in personality and in their appearance. There was clearly an editor at work, because things just moved a bit more fluently. There was no more coincidences like there were in the original story. A lot of that was coincidence, so I guess a neighbory thing was one as well, because it does make sense for employees to live above the shop instead of coincidentally living in the same apartment complex. So in the particular case of Clipwings and Inked Armor, in my opinion, the book is better than the original fanfiction. It is worked out a bit more and just works more fluidly. I did really enjoy the original fanfiction. It will always be very near and dear to my heart. Now on to 50 Shades versus... In my opinion, it's an editor's job to search for any plot holes and correct anything that doesn't really make any sense. 50 Shades didn't really have that. It was still the original story, but Clipwings and Inked Armor really did have some really big changes that only made the story better. And in my opinion, that means that 50 Shades is a bit too much over... It was overhyped a bit too much compared to the quality it is, because in my opinion it still feels like a fanfiction. It still reads like a fanfiction, whereas Clipwings and Inked Armor doesn't at all. I don't mean to say that 50 Shades of Grey is horrible. It is a lot of fun to read, but it's not perfect. It does have its flaws. With Clipwings and Inked Armor, I feel a lot of respect for Helena Hunting as an author, because she already had a lot of fans on fanfiction.net because of Clipwings and Inked Armor. And even then she changed it. She wasn't holding on to that fanfiction as a whole. She changed certain things and allowed them to be changed, and I fell in love with her as an author. I'm going to read everything she writes. I really do think I will. So in my opinion, Clipwings and Inked Armor are more of books than 50 Shades of Grey trilogy is, because it has changed from its first draft as a fanfiction. Whereas 50 Shades has barely changed anything at all. So, tell me what you think of any of the books. If you've read them, have you read fanfiction? Please comment down below. I would love to hear your stories and your thoughts and views. And now it's time for the bonus round. I have found several other fanfictions that have been pulled from fanfiction in order to become published fiction. There are many, many, many other books that have been turned into books that were originally fanfictions. Mostly Twilight related, but some other stuff as well. I have a link with a lot of those books down below if you're curious to click on it. And I found out a very interesting tidbit while researching these books. I found out that the mostly beloved Cassandra Clare had written a fanfiction that was later turned into City of Bones. It was a fanfiction about Harry Potter, where Jace was based on Draco Malfoy. Now that I think about it, I could see some resemblance. I mean, Draco is just as snarky as Jace is. Only Jace is less of a daddy's boy like Draco is in the books. So, fanfiction. What else can you say? So, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in about a week and a half. Bye!